The sun had just dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the rural landscape of southern Ohio. As twilight descended, a group of 6 teenagers gathered in the town's abandoned parking lot, their excitement palpable. Emma, Jack, Lily, Ryan, Sara, and Tom had planned this night for weeks, each bringing something to make the adventure memorable. Emma, the group's unspoken leader, held up a bolt cutter and grinned. "Ready to make some history?" she asked, her voice full of mischief. The others cheered in agreement. The target of their adventure, an old, abandoned amusement park known as Joyland, which had been closed for over a decade. Once a vibrant center of laughter and excitement, Joyland had been left to decay after a tragic accident resulted in several deaths. The park's history was shrouded in rumors and ghost stories, making it the perfect destination for thrill seekers. The group piled into Jack's beat-up van and headed towards the outskirts of town. As they drove, the stories about Joyland's dark past filled the air. Ryan recounted the tale of the Ferris wheel disaster, while Sara shuddered at the mention of Mr. Chuckles, the park's infamous mascot, who was said to still haunt the grounds. The van finally pulled up to the rusted gates of Joyland. The entrance was overgrown with weeds, and a faded sign hung precariously, warning trespassers to keep out. Emma hopped out of the van, bolt cutters in hand. "Here goes nothing," she muttered, snapping the chain with a satisfying clink. She pushed the gates open, revealing the eerie silhouette of the park against the dimming sky. "Welcome to Joyland," Tom said, his voice mockingly grandiose as he stepped through the gates. The others followed, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The park was a ghostly echo of its former self. Rides stood motionless, their once bright colors now muted and peeling. The air was thick with the scent of decay and the faint rustling of leaves. The teenagers moved forward, their footsteps echoing on the cracked pavement. "Let's head to the Ferris wheel first," Jack suggested, his flashlight beam sweeping across the path ahead. The others nodded in agreement, their earlier bravado giving way to a cautious excitement. They walked past the haunted house, where faded posters of ghouls and ghosts flapped in the breeze, and the bumper cars, their metal shells rusting away in silence. The Ferris wheel loomed ahead, a giant skeletal structure against the night sky. Its cabins hung motionless, some tilted at precarious angles. As they approached, the sheer size of the wheel became apparent, dwarfing the surrounding rides. Emma led the way, climbing into one of the cabins with a sense of both dread and exhilaration. "Come on, guys. The view from up here is going to be amazing," she called out, her voice echoing in the stillness. One by one, the others joined her, squeezing into the creaky cabins. As the wheel began to move, powered by some unseen force, they rose higher and higher, the park spreading out below them in all its abandoned glory. The town's lights twinkled in the distance, a stark contrast to the darkness that enveloped Joyland. From their vantage point, the park looked even more desolate. Weeds and vines had overtaken the paths, and the once vibrant attractions stood as silent sentinels. The thrill of being in a forbidden place filled the air, and they laughed and joked, the fear momentarily forgotten. As the wheel descended, Emma's keen eyes caught something unusual near the base of the Ferris wheel. "Did you guys hear that?" she asked, her voice tinged with unease. The others shook their heads, dismissing her concern as paranoia. But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The laughter of her friends faded into the background as she focused on the shadows moving at the edge of the park. With the Ferris wheel ride over, they climbed out of the cabins, still buzzing with adrenaline. "What's next?" Ryan asked, eager to keep the adventure going. "Let's explore more," Emma said, her earlier unease pushed aside. "There's still so much to see." As they moved deeper into the park, the shadows seemed to close in around them, and the thrill of the night took on a darker, more sinister tone. With their initial excitement giving way to a growing curiosity, the group decided to delve deeper into the heart of Joyland. The main plaza, once the bustling center of the amusement park, beckoned them with its eerie silence. The towering statue of Mr. Chuckles, the park's infamous mascot, stood at the center, its once cheerful expression now a haunting grin. "Let's check out the funhouse," Ryan suggested, pointing to a dilapidated building nearby. The funhouse, with its peeling paint and broken windows, seemed to be calling out to them, promising a mix of thrill and terror. They approached the entrance, where a sign hanging by a single hinge read, "Enter, if you dare." The door creaked open with a push, revealing a dark corridor lined with cracked mirrors and faded murals of clowns and carnival scenes. The air inside was stale, carrying a faint, musty odor that hinted at years of neglect. As they stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind them, echoing through the corridors. "Guess we're committed now," Tom joked, though his voice wavered slightly. The funhouse was a labyrinth of mirrors and optical illusions, designed to disorient and amuse. But now, in the dark, it felt more like a maze of horrors. The group moved cautiously, their flashlights casting long shadows on the walls. Each turn brought new surprises, some harmless, like a mirror that made them look comically distorted, and others more sinister, like a mannequin dressed as a clown that seemed to follow them with its glassy eyes. Sara, who had been walking at the rear, suddenly felt a cold hand brush against her arm. She turned quickly, her flashlight revealing only empty space. "Guys, did you see that?" she asked, her voice trembling. The others turned, concern etched on their faces. "See what?" Jack asked, his grip tightening on his flashlight. "Someone or something touched me," Sara insisted, her eyes wide with fear. "It's probably just your imagination," Lily said, though she didn't sound entirely convinced. They continued, their nerves on edge. The deeper they went, the more the funhouse seemed to come alive. Emma's flashlight flickered and died, plunging them into near darkness. "Great, just what we needed," she muttered, shaking the flashlight in frustration. "Here, use mine," Ryan offered, handing her his spare. As they navigated the maze, Emma began hearing faint whispers, like voices carried on the wind. She stopped, straining to listen, but the whispers ceased as soon as she focused on them. "Did anyone else hear that?" she asked, her unease growing. "Hear what?" Tom replied, looking around nervously. "Whispers. Like someone talking," Emma explained, but the others shook their heads. The group pressed on, finally reaching the exit. They stumbled out into the cool night air, their earlier excitement replaced by a sense of dread. "This place is giving me the creeps," Lily said, hugging herself as if to ward off the cold. "Maybe we should leave." But Emma, driven by a mix of curiosity and stubbornness, convinced them to stay. "Let's go to the main stage," she suggested. "We might find something there." The main stage, once the focal point of countless performances and shows, stood eerily silent. The grandstand was overgrown with weeds, and the stage itself was littered with debris. Old posters and flyers, advertising long-forgotten events, lay scattered around, their colors faded by time. Emma picked up a crumpled flyer and read aloud, "Grand opening of Chuckles' Funland, featuring Mr. Chuckles and friends." The words seemed to mock them, a reminder of the park's happier days. As they explored the stage, Emma noticed a trapdoor near the back, partially concealed by a fallen curtain. "Guys, look at this!" she called out. With some effort, they pried the door open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. "Do we really want to go down there?" Sara asked, her fear evident. "There's only one way to find out," Emma replied, determined. She led the way down the stairs, the others following reluctantly. The staircase led to a small underground room. The walls were covered in old photographs and newspaper clippings, documenting the history of Joyland. In the center of the room stood a large, dusty trunk. Emma opened it, revealing a collection of costumes, props, and personal items belonging to the park's performers. "Look at this," Jack said, holding up a photo of Mr. Chuckles with the park's owner. The clown's painted smile seemed more sinister in the dim light. As they examined the contents of the trunk, a sudden noise upstairs made them jump. It sounded like footsteps, slow and deliberate. "We need to get out of here," Tom whispered, his fear palpable. The group hurried back up the stairs, their minds racing with questions and fear. They emerged onto the stage, only to find the park even darker and more foreboding than before. The distant sound of laughter echoed through the empty park, sending chills down their spines. "We should have left when we had the chance," Lily said, her voice barely audible. Emma, however, was more determined than ever to uncover the truth. "There's something going on here, and we need to find out what it is," she said, her resolve unwavering. As they moved towards the next attraction, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. The shadows seemed to follow them, and the laughter became more distinct. The thrill of the adventure had turned into a quest for survival, and the night was far from over. As the group moved away from the main stage, the laughter that had once seemed distant now felt like it was closing in on them. The moon hung high in the sky, casting an eerie glow over Joyland. Emma led the way, her flashlight cutting through the darkness as they approached a large building with a faded sign that read, "Costume Storage." "Maybe we can find more clues in there," Emma suggested, pushing open the heavy door. The hinges creaked loudly, echoing through the empty park. Inside, the room was filled with rows of costumes hanging from metal racks. Dust motes danced in the air, illuminated by their flashlights. The costumes, once vibrant and colorful, were now faded and tattered. Among them were the familiar figures of Mr. Chuckles, Sally the squirrel, and Benny the bear, Joyland's beloved mascots. "These must be the original costumes," Jack said, approaching Mr. Chuckles' outfit. The clown's face, with its exaggerated features and wide grin, looked menacing in the dim light. Lily shuddered. "I always hated clowns," she admitted, taking a step back. As Emma examined Mr. Chuckles' costume, she felt a strange compulsion to touch it. Her fingers brushed against the fabric, and a sudden jolt of static electricity shot through her hand. She gasped and stumbled back, her flashlight flickering. "Emma, are you okay?" Ryan asked, rushing to her side. Yeah, I'm fine, just shocked, she replied, shaking her hand. As she looked back at the costume, she noticed the eyes of the clown flickering with an eerie red light. Did you see that? Emma whispered, pointing at the costume. The others gathered around, their eyes widening as the mascot's eyes began to glow. The limbs of Mr. Chuckles, Sally, and Benny twitched and moved, as if waking from a long slumber. The costumes, once lifeless, were now animated with a menacing intent. Panic set in as the mascots began to advance towards them, their movements jerky and unnatural. "Run!" Jack shouted, grabbing Lily's hand and pulling her towards the exit. The teenagers scattered, fleeing in all directions. Emma and Ryan sprinted towards the bumper cars, hoping to lose the mascots in the maze of rusted vehicles. Sara and Tom headed for the haunted house, while Jack and Lily dashed towards the carousel. The mascots, however, seemed to know the park intimately, using hidden passages and shortcuts to close in on their prey. Emma and Ryan ducked behind a row of bumper cars, trying to catch their breath. "What the hell is going on?" Ryan panted, his eyes wide with fear. "I don't know, but we need to find a way to stop them," Emma replied, her mind racing. She peeked around the corner, watching as Mr. Chuckles stalked through the bumper cars, his red eyes scanning the area. Suddenly, Ryan's flashlight flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. "Not now," he muttered, shaking the flashlight in frustration. Emma grabbed his hand. "We need to stay together. Let's head to the control room near the Ferris wheel. Maybe we can find something there." Meanwhile, Jack and Lily were hiding behind the carousel, their hearts pounding. "We need to find the others," Lily whispered, clutching Jack's arm. "Yeah, but we have to be careful. Those things are everywhere," Jack replied, glancing around nervously. They crept along the edge of the carousel, trying to stay out of sight. In the haunted house, Sara and Tom were navigating the dark corridors, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. "This place was creepy enough without killer mascots," Sara muttered, her voice trembling. "We need to find a way out of here," Tom said, gripping his flashlight tightly. As they turned a corner, they came face to face with Benny the bear, his eyes glowing red. Benny let out a guttural growl, his claws scraping against the walls as he advanced towards them. "Run!" Sara screamed, pulling Tom back the way they came. They sprinted through the haunted house, the sound of Benny's heavy footsteps echoing behind them. Emma and Ryan reached the control room, the door hanging ajar. Inside, they found a panel filled with switches and levers, along with a dusty old manual. "This has to control the park's power," Emma said, flipping through the manual. Ryan looked over her shoulder, scanning the pages. "Here. It says we can cut the power to the animatronics by pulling these switches," he said, pointing to a diagram. Emma nodded, her hands shaking as she reached for the switches. Just as she was about to pull them, Mr. Chuckles burst into the room, his red eyes glowing menacingly. "Hurry, Emma!" Ryan shouted, grabbing a metal rod to defend them. Emma yanked the switches, and the park's lights flickered and went out, plunging them into darkness. The mascots froze, their eyes dimming as they powered down. The sudden silence was deafening, broken only by their ragged breathing. "Did it work?" Ryan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma nodded, her heart still racing. "I think so." But their relief was short-lived. The control panel sparked and short-circuited, and the mascots began to move again, this time more erratically. "We need to get out of here now!" Emma shouted, grabbing Ryan's hand. They bolted from the control room, running towards the exit. Along the way, they found Jack and Lily, who had narrowly escaped Sally the squirrel. "There's a loose section of the fence near the entrance," Jack said, his voice urgent. "We can get out through there." The group sprinted towards the gate, dodging the malfunctioning mascots. They reached the fence, only to find it had been chained shut from the outside. Panic set in as the mascots closed in, their movements unpredictable and dangerous. In a desperate move, Jack and Ryan found a loose section of the fence and began to tear it open. The others helped, and they managed to create a gap large enough to squeeze through. One by one, they escaped the park, the mascots reaching the fence just as the last of them slipped through. Breathless and shaken, the teenagers ran until Joyland was a distant, dark silhouette against the horizon. They vowed never to speak of what happened that night, knowing that no one would believe their story. The abandoned amusement park remained a haunted, cursed place, its secrets buried in the darkness, waiting for the next unwary souls to awaken the terror within. The adrenaline-fueled escape from Joyland left the teenagers exhausted and shaken, but they knew they had to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the cursed amusement park. As they stumbled through the woods, the night air chilled their sweat-soaked clothes, and the sounds of the forest did little to calm their frayed nerves. "We need to find somewhere safe to rest," Emma said, her voice hoarse from running and shouting. "There's an old ranger station not far from here," Jack suggested, pointing in the direction he believed it lay. "We can regroup and figure out our next move there." The group followed Jack's lead, moving through the underbrush as quickly and quietly as they could. After what felt like an eternity, they spotted the silhouette of the ranger station against the night sky. The small wooden building was in disrepair, but it was a welcome sight. "Let's check inside," Ryan said, pushing the creaky door open. The interior was dusty and filled with cobwebs, but it appeared secure. The windows were boarded up, and the door had a sturdy lock. "This will do," Emma said, collapsing onto an old bench. The others followed suit, catching their breath and trying to process what had just happened. "Do you think those things can follow us here?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Emma replied, "but we need to stay alert. We can't let our guard down." They took turns keeping watch, the rest of them trying to get some rest. As the hours passed, the sounds of the night seemed to grow louder, every rustle and creak amplifying their fear. Emma, who had taken the first watch, stared out into the darkness, her mind racing with thoughts of the mascots and their unnatural movements. Suddenly, a faint noise outside caught her attention. She held her breath, straining to listen. It was a soft, shuffling sound, like something dragging along the ground. Her heart pounded as she realized the mascots had found them. "Guys, wake up!" she hissed, shaking the others. "They're here!" The group sprang to their feet, their exhaustion replaced by a surge of adrenaline. They gathered whatever makeshift weapons they could find, an old crowbar, a rusty wrench, and pieces of broken furniture. "We have to hold them off," Jack said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "We can't let them get inside." The door rattled as something heavy slammed against it. The mascots were trying to break in. Ryan and Tom braced the door with a heavy table, while Emma and Sara stood ready with their makeshift weapons. The windows, though boarded up, weren't entirely secure. Sally the squirrel's clawed hand burst through one of the gaps, reaching for them. Emma swung the crowbar with all her strength, smashing the hand away. "Keep them out!" she shouted, her voice a mix of fear and determination. The attack intensified as the mascots pounded on the walls and windows, their glowing red eyes visible through the gaps. The group's initial terror turned into a desperate fight for survival. They struck at the limbs that reached through the gaps, trying to fend off the relentless assault. Despite their efforts, the door began to give way. "We can't hold them much longer," Ryan yelled, sweat pouring down his face. In a moment of clarity, Emma remembered the gas canister she had seen in the corner of the room. "We need to make a run for it," she said, grabbing the canister. "We'll use this to create a distraction." "Are you sure?" Tom asked, his voice shaking. "We don't have a choice," Emma replied. "Get ready to move." As the door finally gave way, Emma tossed the gas canister towards the entrance and struck it with the crowbar, creating a spark. The canister exploded, flames erupting and engulfing the entrance in fire. The mascots recoiled, their circuits malfunctioning in the heat. "Go! Now!" Emma screamed. The group bolted through the back door, running into the forest. The fire bought them precious seconds, but they knew it wouldn't hold the mascots for long. They sprinted through the woods, the sounds of the mascots' mechanical movements echoing behind them. Their lungs burned, and their legs felt like lead, but they pushed on, driven by sheer survival instinct. As dawn broke, the first rays of sunlight pierced through the trees. The mascots, sensitive to the light, began to slow down, their movements becoming more erratic. The teenagers reached the edge of the woods, collapsing onto the pavement of a rural highway. A passing truck driver, startled by their disheveled and frantic appearance, stopped to help. "What happened to you kids?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "Just get us out of here," Emma pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. The driver helped them into the truck, and they drove away from the nightmare of Joyland. As they sped down the highway, the group sat in stunned silence, the events of the night replaying in their minds. They had escaped with their lives, but the trauma of their encounter with the murderous mascots would haunt them forever. The truck driver dropped them off at the nearest town, where they were met with a mix of concern and skepticism. Their story of animated mascots and a haunted amusement park seemed too fantastical to believe. Local authorities investigated Joyland, but found no evidence of the mascot's attack. The park remained a derelict, eerie monument to its tragic past. Emma, Jack, Lily, Ryan, Sara, and Tom returned to their normal lives, but the bond forged in terror remained. They made a pact never to speak of that night again, but each of them carried the scars of their ordeal. The memories of glowing red eyes and mechanical laughter haunted their dreams, a constant reminder of the dark secrets buried within Joyland. Years later, rumors persisted about the old amusement park. Some claimed to hear whispers of laughter on the wind, while others swore they saw the figures of mascots moving in the shadows. The legend of Joyland grew, a cautionary tale for those who dared to explore its haunted grounds. For the 6 survivors, the adventure had turned into a nightmare that left them forever changed. The thrill-seeking teens who had entered Joyland seeking a night of fun had emerged as scarred adults, bound by a shared horror that few could understand. Joyland remained a dark, foreboding place, its secrets waiting for the next group of unwary souls to awaken the terror within